Broken
And we're
thumbnail.
live.
Hello.
We're just warming up before the show starts.
Hello.
Pardon the weird noises. We just finished an episode of Strong Woman.
Doom
Yes. Um,
Doom.
And um, it has this nice. They add post editing dub
Dobong
sounds.
sun. Dobong sun.
And it's catchy.
Dobong
If
sun.
you're watching right now, the show's starting in a few minutes. Please feel free to drop in a comment so we know you're there because we can't see if you're online.
If you're
Um,
watching the recorded version of this
mm,
sometime in the future, then of course feel free to skip forward to like when the show's actually happening. Or just hang out as we
manually reshare.
share links and like go through stage chatter as we try to just make things happen. Because a live stream is not quite a live stream without an audience. I mean, it makes it more fun. If not, then we're just recording a video on our own. We totally will still do. Um,
Okay, Facebook feed is running.
I'm getting lost of what I'm clicking. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
sending it to our mailing list.
Mm-mm.
Sent.
And of course, I was gonna click to interact with that post, and then your message window pops up. Uncoordinated.
Okay, YouTube feed. YouTube stream is running. Resharing on Twitter.
Copying link as well.
Reshare. Okay, sharing now on Twitter.
A double game discussion week because we're talking about this time it's an RPG. But we had a board game related episode on Tuesday where we talked about a very unknightly game being the wacky races.
That's not often we have no major theme connecting the entire region.
Yeah, we ran out of holidays to like talk about. Blame International Women's Day and the Day of Awesomeness happening on the same week. Maybe that's like that was a non-optimal distribution of holidays. Um, so now we just gotta roll. Whew. Okay, I've also posted. Okay, yeah, hey, it's RPG Day, so cool. Um, if you're unfamiliar with tabletop RPGs, I think it's still a good episode to join in on, and we can talk about at least how this one works, and it gives you appreciation for it, and how not all RPGs are D&D.
Mm, mm-mm.
If you are experienced and you haven't played Pendrican itself, then please feel it's a good time to jump in. And then if you are just a big fan of Arthurian lore, then this is still a great episode for you because this system is kind of awesome. And I realize I can roll for this system on my Fitbit because I can at least roll a single d20. I shall periodically roll my traits today.
So, what is a role playing game, Rocky?
Um, Apparently very different from story games. Sorry.
Shall,
Sorry.
shall we explore this topic and start the show?
Oops. Now my Fitbit won't stop rolling. Wait. And then it vibrates when it rolls, so it's like, oh, hi. All right. So,
Let's start the show.
yeah, I guess we'll start. So we'll just roll credits, and then we'll get the live discussion going. Oh, you know what? Did you share this with the Pendrican, our Pendrican game group?
Yeah, I should do that.
You do that. I'm gonna play the credits. So wait, caption away, and we'll be right back.
Oh yeah!
This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, a little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
It's completely unscripted, not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. Today we're talking about a role-playing game. While we spent most Thursdays talking about different topics, I kind of wanted to squeeze in a role-playing game as a topic this time without affecting the board game topics we usually have on Tuesdays.
Well, it's funny because when I was first suggesting to Toby, hey, you want to talk about Pendrican, I thought he was going to replace Tuesday and talk about, because I first mentioned, ooh, you want to talk about the wacky races because it's a game we can easily talk about. And then ended up with 2 game topics in a week. So, okay, there's no themed holiday that could justify, quote unquote, what's this? That could justify talking about Pendrican specifically, but we're just gonna have fun with it. All right, so where do we start? Toby.
Well, you just started and we cut it off with the intro. But Rocky, what is a role-playing game?
Toby, don't you want to give us a definition?
A role-playing game is an improvised game played by a group of people where traditionally
Sometimes not.
one person one person plays the role of the storyteller or dungeon master or referee or whatever you want to call it. Hollyhock God is still the most awesome term.
Master of ceremonies.
Followed by master of ceremonies. While the other players play the players, which are the primary cast of the story being told as a group. Typically fantasy in genre, there have been many role-playing games, everything from superhero stories to spy and espionage stories, action-packed adventures, horror, romance, and more.
Yeah, but I guess in more
Traditional.
colloquial, perspective, then this is what people mean by, do you play D&D? Do you play games like D&D? So D&D is the most popular example of a tabletop role-playing game, but there are many, many others, and that is like the focus of today's episode, one that is called the King Arthur Pendragon RPG.
Yes. In King Arthur Pendragon, all players take the role of knights as they go through stories that are revolving, if not involving, Arthur himself. Written way, 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 way back. See, I lost my page.
Yeah, it was first published
Yeah.
in 1985 by Chaosium Inc.
Designed by Greg Stafford.
Oh, sorry, there was Chaosium. I don't know. Yeah,
And from Chaosium to Green Knight Publishing,
very apt publisher,
to White Wolf Incorporated, to later Nocturnal Media, then back to Chaosium. The game has gone through multiple editions, currently at its 5.2 edition, with the 6th edition or 7th, I forget which number.
There was a preview of the 6th in 2020, but that
Yeah.
seems to be, in terms of like published release, but not just teased, because I know there's been editions teased.
Yes. So a new edition is coming, but okay, it still says 26th edition and
yeah, that's right.
So in this game you play knights, and what makes this very interesting compared to other role-playing games is that the system has a lot of old school traditional approaches, but at the same time seems to be very welcoming of much more modern appreciations of the genre.
And hello to Jeanette and Adrian. Hello.
For example, most role-playing games have had the old school design of primarily getting experience points or whatever points you earn only by defeating enemies. But even for an old game, Pendragon was already open to gaining glory, their version of experience points, through various means, both in combat or by portraying yourself in a knightly manner, or by spending your money because you were a lord after all in a land,
or witnessing key events in
Yes.
history.
Pendragon uses its own game system different from Dungeons and Dragons and other systems, wherein you have a 20-sided die which is used to resolve many of the tests, but then occasionally you also roll other dice. There are stats in the game, but the stats themselves are not the primary thing you look at when you're playing a Pendrican game. Instead, what rises to prominence more are the traits, which represent both emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects of your personality.
Mm-hmm.
Are you valorous? Are you someone who believes in generosity? Do you hold up the values and virtues of honesty? Are you someone who's very energetic and can't sit down properly? Are you lazier than most? Do you think there's a point in being deceitful? All that matters in Pendragon, because if those traits are of a certain level high enough, you can't just choose to do it. Or, sorry, you can't just choose to act against it. You must roll to test to see if you could choose to act otherwise. So, a character who is, let's say, honesty at 18 will have to fail their honesty test if they want to lie in character.
And what does failing mean?
Failing in this game means rolling higher than the rating that you have. So unlike most games wherein as your traits go up, high rolls are still great. In Pendragon, the dice system is all about rolling below your stat. But then if you roll exactly your stat, you achieve what is called the critical success. And when it comes to the traits, that's when I guess you could say the yo-yo effect happens of if you were trying to be deceitful but you're really honest in terms of traits, you have to fail your honest roll. If you do succeed in failing it, you then have to succeed in being deceitful.
No, wait. You succeed in failing it. Sorry. Okay.
Yes, because you have to fail first your honesty roll,
Okay. And then
right?
succeed at
And
on
then
deceit,
and then you
or
have to
fail
succeed.
both, and then you
And then
choose.
if you fail with your deceitful roll as well, then you can now choose which one you'll do. But if you succeed in your honesty check at the start, then you have no choice but to be honest, even if you wanted to lie, which perfectly captures the drama of being a knight wherein my honor compels me to tell you this, my lord, or even if you plead, I must be loyal to my master and I cannot do this for you, my lady. And it's such RPG gold.
So, from a player, I'll first talk about the whole roll under system
Mm.
thing. Initially it feels a little counterintuitive, and then of course, like, I'm sure some will cite, like, like on the D&D side, before it was similar to armor class type things, right? Where
Yes, the Dungeons and Dragons did go through a series of different systems for combat. One of the more notable ones was THACO, or to hit armor class 0,
mm,
wherein 0 was like the ideal armor class, and then there was weird ups and
because
downs.
you could never roll below zero.
Mhm.
Okay, and then so you have your as your stats get higher, then you have to always roll
Hey, Nico.
uh below your own stat.
Mhm.
And then, so, like, if my reading value is at 4 and you're rolling a 20-sided die, the chances that you are going to succeed to prove that you can read are very
Mm.
low. But then it gets weird when the rolls are contested. It's best seen in combat. So if you're both fighting and then you're both rolling to strike, now you need to roll below your stat but higher than the other person, and it's this weird back and forth. Like, I succeeded, but then did he not succeed as much as me?
Mm.
And
But the
it's
beauty
cool.
of that stat is that it still shows how, if let's say you had a sword skill of 15 and I had a sword skill of 5, while I do have a chance to beat you if I still roll higher than you within my 5,
Yes.
you have a greater chance of succeeding and
Yes.
beating me. Because even if you roll a 7 to 10, that's higher than my 5. So no matter what I roll, you're higher than me.
Yeah, then I'll have a better effect, but technically you still get what you want.
Yes.
In that, in a more modern uh, RPG narrative sort of state.
Adding to the system is the idea of passions. And as you have different passions, which work similar to traits, my love for my family or my loyalty to my lord,
Or my hatred for Saxons.
these passions then come into play because they can be invoked and you make a roll. If you succeed in the roll, the passion surges and gives you a plus 10 to the next skill you're choosing to do. So, in your example of reading, and let's say you only had a 5,
My reading stats really 4,
but
but
let's say let's say it was a desperate moment of I need to know what message this is because Arthur might need it. This is for my lord, Arthur. Then you're impassionately calling to the gods, to whatever forces may be to help you succeed in achieving this for your lord. The passion roll succeeds, your reading roll now instead of 5 is for 15.
For yeah, 15.
So it's
yes.
now a bigger chance to succeed.
But you can still fail.
And worse, beyond just possibly still failing, the passion roll itself can fail.
Yeah,
And
passion rolls are risky.
that leads to you becoming disheartened, or worse, overcome with a sense of madness wherein you feel you're not worthy, you feel you've failed your your higher ideals, and in character it can lead you to just temporarily losing sanity and running away into woods to contemplate on how terrible you are as a knight.
This is how in at least in our ongoing campaign, this has become the running gag. Like, oh, is it time to run into the woods? Because it's not just failing a passion roll. When you hit a 20, so it's like
Mhm.
it's an absolute failure. Yeah, time to go to the woods.
The Pendrican book, as you can see, is a nice heavy book. I do not know if this edition has a soft bound version. I have
Mm.
not seen a soft
Yeah, I
bound
don't. I
version.
don't think if you look at the official store, it's just hardcover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The book comes with a very beautiful colored map. The map shows you the main locations.
Just one
of
of
the
many
game.
maps. There's so many
Um,
maps in this
The
game.
character sheets are colored. There are, of course, digital sheets that you can use. Um, the
It is a sheet with multiple pages because knights have estates that you're gonna have to care for, and then you'll need to be able to track your experience.
Every
glory.
knight's pennant is displayed here, so you are there are even guidelines on how to make your own.
My coat of arms does not look great. Uh,
So in this book, you have everything you need to run a Pendragon campaign. You have the basics of knighthood. You have the basic ideas and ideals of what's expected of a knight. You have the initial timeline that goes through the the rule of King Uther to the point that we are nearing the rise of Arthur. And this allows you to generate a family history of what your great grandfather, grandfather, and father went through before you were born. And if you're wondering why so much, I think, Rocky, you need to explain what glory is.
awesome. No. Because glory is the equivalent of experience points, and in Pendragon,
You actually start with glory.
you start with glory because of the renown of your family, and
Mhm.
therefore, at the beginning of the game, we spent some time rolling the histories of our respective grandfathers and great grandfathers. And what happens is you don't get all their glory. Glory is not like a rich inheritance that sets you up for success, but you will kind of get a leg up because you get a percentage of that glory that's passed on from generation to generation. So it does give you a bigger base to start with, but it's like I forget, it's like a tenth, a fourth. It's like
You always get a 10.
a tenth.
Yes.
Then it's like it's not a great amount, but it's a nice start. And the more awesome the knight, then the more potential that is carried
And
over to his
and
offspring.
it's such a good thing to start with, wherein you could say, you're all starting knights, but oh, you're the one whose father was this and that and this and that, because it builds the history at the very start of
Versus
the
the
game.
guy is like your grandfather and your father did a lot of garrison duty.
So, for example, here in the book, it says year 450. Vortigern, inspired by the battle prowess of the Saxons and even more by the talents of Rowena, the daughter of the Saxon chief, marries her in a lavish wedding celebration. The chief receives the bride as prize, and many voice concern that Vortigern is favoring the newcomers rather than the loyal native Britons. Events. So you now roll for your grandfather. On the D20, if you roll a 1, you died. So this is the day your grandfather dies in the wedding of Rowena. If you roll the 2 to 5, nothing significant happened. If you roll the 16 to 18, which is like a majority of the roll, attended the wedding
a 6 to 18.
and gained 25 glory. But then if you roll the 19 to 20, attended the wedding and noticed she was pregnant.
Ooh,
So-
so it's not even a combat thing. It's just information you had.
And because of that information, 50 glory.
Ooh,
Because people remember, yeah, I heard she was pregnant. The grandfather of Ganyan was the one who said it. And that's what this game is about. It's about little activities that gain you glory. And glory, mind you, is not always positive. Knowing about scandals gets you glory. Achieving great battles gets you glory. But at the same time, being the one who ran away, being the one who lost in this battle. Glory simply means people are talking about you.
It's reputation. It's
And whether
reputation.
it's positive or negative, glory is glory. And such glory does carry over. If you have a grandfather and a father who was always failing in the fights against the Saxons, that glory will carry over to your character, and you'll be known as, oh, you're the one with the Saxon runner, or something like that.
Mm. So it's a great leg up to kind of build your story. If you're the kind of
Mm.
person who's like, "Ooh, I want to develop really rich backstory for my character," there's a system for that here, and to make your characters backstory very very relevant because it literally defines kind of your history, and
Mhm.
then it gives you initial talking points in terms of like how the different knights know each other. Um,
We can talk about attributes.
okay, how do you want to cover that?
So in the game, just like most role-playing games, characters have what we call attributes, and the attributes range from size, which is your general health, and
Literally your height.
your not just your height, but your build.
Yes.
If you're a big figure, if you're a smaller wiry figure, there's dexterity, which is of course the most important universal stat ever. I think there are like just a handful of games that do not have dexterity as a stat.
Mm.
Strength, which represents of course your physical strength. Constitution, your health. And appearance, which both is your beauty and your ability to communicate and talk and do diplomacy. Interestingly, the game has no intelligence rating. The game does not expect you to do rolls to go, can I figure out what happened, or can I find clues?
Mm.
There are skills that sort of touch on such things like awareness that allows you to notice things, or um,
Reading and writing.
um, intrigue that
Intrigue.
allows you to notice when things that are not normally nightly are happening around you. But the reason for not having an intelligence rating is because the wisdom of what to do with knowledge and how to act is designed by the game to be a player choice.
Yeah.
When you see the queen is slipping a finger against the shoulder of the knight, what does that mean? No roll will tell you that. Maybe the intrigue rolls will give you additional stuff like, oh, that knight has always been visiting her, and his name's Lancelot.
Mm.
But beyond that, it's up to the player to decide what it
So
means.
I appreciate that it takes away from that classic conundrum of when you are smarter than your character,
Mm.
then you get into these weird mini arguments, whether with other players or even your GM, about whether or not your character would have figured that out with your given your intelligence stat is so low. So let's sidestep that question entirely, and then the player, it's just the player acting as the character and go with it.
Now, Pendragon, unlike other role playing games, does not have levels. So the
Mm.
progress of your character and the development mainly comes from what we call checks that are done at the end of the year, and I'll have you explain that. But beyond that,
Okay.
there are also the benefits that come with the growth of a character during the winter phase, because the game is divided into what I guess you could say the activity phase where all the adventures happen, and then the winter phase, with the winter phase being a summary of everything you've done that year, of what family scandals and sudden events might happen, of any other misadventures you're going through, of glory that you accumulated automatedly. Because as a landlord, you have glory from owning
That
the
is
land,
true.
from having certain titles, you automatically get glory. For having certain prominent treats, you're getting glory. You're the one with honesty at 18.
Mm.
Everyone knows that. So you always yearly get more glory for being that honest person.
And just like achieving certain statuses, like are you truly a chivalrous knight, are
Hmm.
you a romantic knight, are you a knight of the round table, a lot of these things give glory at the end of the year. So in terms of checks, all your abilities will have a tiny little box beside them on the sheet. Actually,
Hmm.
it's all abilities, all passions, all traits.
Hmm.
And every time you once you hit a critical roll for that passion trait or skill within that game year, you put a check. And at the end of the year, all of the stats where you have a check, you get to roll a d20. And counterintuitively, if you roll higher than your current stat, you'll get to increase it by one. And so it's like the whole year you're rolling under, you're rolling under, you're rolling under. And
Mhm.
then for leveling up, you're rolling over, which of course makes sense because the higher the
The
skill
better
or
you are at it.
the better you are at it and the harder it is to progress to the next level.
Yes.
You only get one check per year though,
Mm.
technically speaking. There, I mean, we've made like some GM fiat moments of like,
Mm.
okay, you get two checks or something, but typically you get one check. So if you were awesome with your sword at least once,
In
then
that
that's
year,
enough.
there's a
Yeah,
chance.
if it keeps happening, you're not going to get more checks
Yes.
because there's only so far you can go. But that already helps you a lot in terms of advancement. And then at the end of the year, you then get to choose your first basic reward, which is either you roll a d6 and then you can now add 1 plus d6
Skill
skill
points.
points to different skills. You can't put them all in one.
Hmm.
Or you can increase one passion trait or skill by one. In terms of skill, if it's already at 15,
Hmm.
you can only increase it with this one movement. If it's traits and passions, this is the only way you can improve other than succeeding on checks.
Yes.
Um, and then traits, and I'm sorry, a little slide, but traits are tricky because traits are a scale of 20. So out of 20 points in total. So you start most traits are probably going to be 10, 10, 10 honesty and 10 deceitful. So if you increase in honesty, your deceitful goes down. So
Mm.
honesty becomes 11, deceitful becomes 9. And how you balance things out is sort of part of the game. So you don't have levels, but you do have advancement, which you get to craft for your
Mm.
character. But in all honesty, if there is a sense of leveling in the game, we have to talk about aging, which is the other thing that happens every year during winter,
Hmm.
where your character will now age one more year. And once you hit the grand ripe age of 35, you start to go into decline because, of course, this game is not in modern times and
Hmm.
people did not live as long. So it's something to think
As
about.
you reach certain levels of aging, there are now possibilities that grow larger in frequency and chance of your stats going down. This represents the aches and pains of getting older, not being able to think as quickly or react as quickly. And it is an ongoing struggle of dropping stats because the game is also mechanically telling you you should have a kid right now who has grown old enough to carry on your legacy.
Yeah. So as you start to age and lose stats, then your likelihood of winning in battles goes down, which means your likelihood of death increases. But it doesn't mean you're gonna stop joining battles because honor is probably gonna compel you. So then you have to think about kids. So the other
Mhm.
thing about Pendrican as an RPG is that it's a fairly lethal game.
Yes.
In our ongoing campaign, we have a particular player who has had to find children more than others. But basically speaking, when your character dies for any reason,
Mhm.
there is no resurrection here. They are dead. And your best bet is to hopefully have a son who is now of age, at least to be a squire, preferably already a knight, who is now old enough to inherit your prior character's glory, at
Mhm.
least 10% of it,
Yes.
and then take up the mantle. And so now you're really you I think it's when you hit your first generational shift that you really feel the what did I really accomplish in my life?
Yes.
Was it greater than or the same as what you received as glory inheritance from
Mhm.
your father? And that's a weird aspect of the game.
And in many ways, it's what makes Pendragon stand out against so many other games, wherein so many other games are all about let's be the awesome heroes, let's sacrifice our lives to save the world, and then let's laugh about how that story went. In Pendragon, it feels much more gritty without being necessarily a gritty system. Yes, it's lethal. Characters would range from 20 to 50 hit points, for example, most likely
Wow.
for the rest of the game
50?
if you're like super healthy.
50? No, 50 means like you're super skewed your stats
Yeah.
somewhere.
But
Anyway.
even with hit points that high, a standard knight would deal 4d6 of damage for every attack.
Mm.
A standard enemy can go as high as 8d6. Giants can go as high as 12d6 and the like. But that just tells you overall, one hit kills are not uncommon. And worse, you might not have been killed with a one hit kill, but if your hit points, if the damage you get is a certain number in a single blow, you can be knocked out, which effectively can mean you might die anyway.
Or you get a what's this, a mortal wound.
Yes.
Then that gives you like a long term condition in addition to
So the
all the other crap.
game nicely, despite having elements that allow for more enchantment and more supernatural things, fighting dragons, facing griffins, um, dealing with giants, you never stop feeling like you're still human. You never stop feeling like in this game you still have to consider the legacy you'll leave, the family you're building. And it's not uncommon in this game, at least in the way we play it, that you'll have players really pondering on, I feel like I want to do this, but for my character's legacy, I think I have to choose this because, that's what will carry on. Um, so one of the things that makes this so awesome is the fact that it comes, well, doesn't come, but there is also an available campaign for it called the Great Pendrican campaign, and that spans at least three generations of stories worth, wherein you go from the time of Uther to Arthur's reign, Arthur's fall, the Age of Enchantment, the quest for the Grail, and the eventual tragedy of how it all ends. And that is looking at so much stories that you have players um, trying to decide really what type of legacy they want to go for. We've had one player who is insistent. I'll try to see how long I can try not to be a knight around knight of the table,
Mm.
and they're already feeling a bit of that struggle. In your case, we kind of had more fun, and we decided to add some of the magic systems, magic rules only in the fourth edition of the game, but the fifth and later editions wanted to focus on knights, but we kind of realized why not? Let's have fun with it. So we're having that, and I think you're feeling the I'm not acting as a knight anymore. I don't like this.
Yes, being a Merlin type character in a knightly world is not honorable.
And at the same time, you hate that you have to because it gives the advantage the guys need.
Yeah.
So you're starting to see how why Merlin hated all of you.
Our last few major battles, I'm always on the sides. I don't enter combat, and then I'm like essentially that shaman in Age of Empires going wolo 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 wolo, trying to make things happen. So that's a bit of a struggle. But it's okay. It's like different paths that you can explore. And then we've had cases where we wanted to see what if women could become knights, even though this setting is not traditionally favoring women,
But the book supports it.
but the book does support it, and so we have a difficult path for female knights,
Mhm.
and how they try to continue glory. I mean, it's still like they still have to pay some respect to the intent of the genre, but then they try to still provide that path. Um, I guess with that we didn't quite address is that so what we mean by King Arthur, though, admittedly that's a very confusing term. There are
Yes.
many different versions and myths of King Arthur over the years, and even the individual knights. Hence, you have cases where this knight was here in one story and then suddenly jumped somewhere else in another story, and because it just talks about years and years and years of story. So
And then when it comes to the stories themselves are not all wholly consistent
yes,
because there have been many variations, many reinterpretations, many writers who built on the writings of others. But then later on, maybe the earlier writer took their own direction, and now there are two divergent paths. So it's like a multiverse of Arthurian stories. Wherein in one, Arthur and Morgana were siblings. In the other one, they were distant cousins. In the other one, they were married and then they split up. In the other one, Arthur was half faithful, and so on and so forth.
so for this particular one, it does trend towards a more idealized Christian version
Mm.
of King Arthur, and this is to acknowledge that the original Arthurian stories weren't necessarily um weren't even necessarily about him being Christian.
Mm.
Um, and then sorry, what's
So
the
it draws from the 15th century
Arthurian
Lemort,
romance?
yeah,
Le Morte d'Arthur. Okay,
compared to many of the other
which is
approaches
French.
of the story.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it is an RPG setting, so you're still kind of free to play around with what you want to do. And then a lot of the supplements that have been released for the game over the years explore different individual stories and how to incorporate them into the game.
Mm.
So yes, do you want to play the story of the Green Knight? You can totally play the story of the Green Knight. It has its own thing, and it could be scary.
The Pendragon game system itself has many supporting books. Everything from Savage Mountains, which allows Welsh characters, Perilous Forest, that introduces more of the lands of Cumbria and the north. Blood and Lust allows you to explore Saxon characters as well. Pagan Shore introduces Irish characters, and so on and so forth.
And these are like still the older like systems released in the 90s.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
So the current system, the 5.2 system, is the main release now for
mhm.
Chaosium. And then how would you define it? Was it an attempt to marry or to clean up the past? I don't know. Like what's our background
So
here?
definitely the 5.2 system did try to streamline a lot of things. For example, one of our favorites is whenever battles happen.
Mm.
Whenever battles happen, Pendragon shifts from a typical role playing game of rolling and clashing back and forth to something that goes through phases. There's the initial phase, the roll battle, where the leader sees if they can coordinate everything properly. There's the next phase wherein you can do your first charge if you had that opportunity,
Are you on a horse?
or it's duck because here comes the missile attacks.
Mm.
Let's try to survive them
Do you have a shield?
because you can't you can't dodge missile attacks. Maybe you're lucky enough to parry it with a sword, or maybe your horsemanship allowed you to outrun certain areas, but
It's
there's
unlikely.
there's no active dodging it. It's just
Yeah.
a question of surviving it. And then with that, you have the clash happen, and with the clash happen, you have different roles. You're checking to see if you landed in an advantageous position or not. You're checking to see if you are suddenly routed, if you're surrounded, if there's an opportunity to capture that captain, or if you suddenly realize things are going either way. And after you survived a round of this mass combat system, there's a roll for followers' fates, which simply tells you that unless you've been critically succeeding in everything so far, you are losing men
The
every
people under
single
you keep dying. There
every
is a
single round.
natural war of attrition.
So if let's say you start with 10 men with you and you've lost 10% of your men, you're down to 9 in that round, and it continues to trickle down as the rounds progress. No men around you, then you're in deep trouble.
Then follower's fate is yours.
And 5.2 was one of those that really tried to clean it up. A lot of the older books offered variations on the systems on how it can be done. Ultimately, your mileage may vary on how you want to approach the combat, but generally speaking, during mass combat, there's only a single exchange of attacks, because you then narrate how it went for that number of seconds of exchanges. Whereas in actual combat, then you make a number of rolls sometimes to represent the percentages of trying to hit the person, and you still narrate the exchanges back and forth appropriately.
Okay, you have to explain to me if it's system or if it is you. But a lot of times, especially when we're the commanders in combat, you have us declare how many rounds of
Yes,
combat we're gonna fight. Is that
it's
system?
it's in the Great Pendragon book.
Okay.
Because in the Great Pendragon book, there are mass combat scenarios that happen, and if you choose to withdraw with less rounds, then it continues without you.
Yeah.
So it becomes a, oh no, we pulled out too soon. Will they succeed?
Mm-mm.
So it's that sort of a thing. So like there's sometimes the battle is listed as it will last 8 rounds. And there's no round one, round two, round three. This is what happens. Round five, Arthur joins the battle, and so on and so forth. So let's say if you declared we'll stay for 4, then I get to go. As you're withdrawing, you see Arthur charge in.
Mm.
And you're like, wait, you have to go back. And I'm like, sorry, everyone's pulling out. That's the message you gave. You'll next round try to roll battle and gather forces again. So it's that sort of a thing. And it allows for that feeling of,
It's a weird betting
yeah.
system because sometimes you bet too high early in the game and you come back with fewer player characters
Mm,
who do not survive the combat, and it's hard to it's there's no guarantee. Sometimes you can survive 5 rounds easy because everything is going your way. Other times, getting to round 3 is a
mm,
miracle, and you don't know how you got there. So it's funny. It's so there's the sort of declared round for the battle that your unit is committed to. But then individually, you can still try to withdraw, but
Yes.
you also have to roll to get out of the battle, and it's in not easy under any circumstances.
Given that the game does try to approach things in a more level, realistic level, the manner, this also means no healing potions. And at
Yeah,
most, you can trust on the surgeons. I keep pronounce for how to pronounce
chirurgeons. Yeah,
chargons.
which still
Um,
sounds like
it's
surgeons.
it's basically relying on them to save you if things go too bad. And then assuming you did survive, it's then checking if you can choose to remain inactive for a number of weeks in order to recover back to full health. And for some this might sound like so the game becomes boring because you're not able to do stuff. Actually, in our experience, it even becomes more interesting because you're suddenly forced to focus on the lordly side of things. Or worse, good luck, I'll pray for you as you go to battle. And I'm like, I hate it, I can't join the battle. But that's how it
There are times
is.
you wonder, oh, did you work on your stewardship stat? Because now you're gonna get stuck in your estate as you heal. And we have literally had I've been a player character
Mm.
knocked out and like stuck in bed for months. And what can you do? Because you only roll a small percentage, a small number of hit points per
Now,
month.
one of the things that makes this game also interesting is that since you are planning your line, so to speak, you actually are handling more than just your character. First, there's your squire.
Ah.
Your squire has their own sheet. So does your horse, but your squire gets more development than your horse.
The horse is more likely to survive, and you will protect your horse more.
And as your squire gains stats with you, because as you gain stuff, they
It
learn
gains
too.
it's supposed to gain the
Um,
same, yeah.
it's not unheard of to find yourself realizing, oh, my squire can be a knight now, and can I play my squire?
Mm.
Because they build their own interesting stories. Even more so if you made sure that the squire
Is your
is
son.
your son. And it makes it so much more interesting because now you have all these elements we're in a normal fantasy role playing game. These would be support characters, and you'd be like, you know, delay the monsters while I deal with the luck. Here, you're like, that's my son. Will I just throw him in front of the monsters while I'm dealing with the luck?
Hmm.
So it has those
Or even
moments.
if you're playing the son, will you charge into battle for glory and of course for the to
Mhm.
protect your father?
Or
Um,
worse, so you roll energetic. I guess you chose to charge because you wanted to show off to your dad.
yeah. So some traits can
Or the
get you
other
into
flip
trouble.
side, roll valor. You're too scared to raise your sword.
Mm.
What do you do? Father, I can't do this.
So it's a lot of cool role playing
Hmm.
moments in this setting. So I think it's a good overview at least of the game because
Hmm.
I do want to spend time talking about the Great Pendragon campaign
Yes.
specifically. So Toby, what is the Great Pendragon campaign?
So, as mentioned earlier, the Gate Pendrican campaign is a campaign that was written and won the Origin Awards for Best Role Playing Supplement for 1985. It is a campaign that stretches from the time of King Uther um, to the rise of the boy king, to the coming of Arthur, to his crown and glory as the emperor of the world, to eventually the Age of Enchantment, the Grail Quest, and the tragedy of how it ends. One thing that many people overlook is that Arthur or Arthurian tales are ultimately tragedies.
Mm-hmm.
They're always about how things could have been better, of how things could have gone a certain way. The Lancelot Guinevere affair is fated to happen. Depending on the version of the Arthurian tale you follow, and yes, the Great Pendragon campaign covers for all as well. Arthur and his relationship with his kids were never smooth,
Mm, mm.
depending on which kid you chose to tap in the stories.
Yes.
His relationship with Morgana Le Fay has never been smooth. Even if you think about it, had they just worked
But they
together,
just talked.
it would have been such an
They're
awesome
always just being catty in each other's doorways.
power
Arthur.
siblings. I got the magic, you got the sword, and let's rule the world. But no. And then, even as far as the concept of the round table, as players, you have those aspirations of, oh, we can do this to make it better. We can do
Mm.
this to make it that. But the Great Pendulum campaign sort of guides you in how these are areas that are blind spots for how Arthur will treat it, and
Mm.
be like, no, we'll do it this way, and that's part of the tragedy of it all. So it's incredibly written. It's terrifying to consider running. It's over 400 pages, and
For the campaign,
yeah,
not even counting this main book.
but at the same time, it's something that I highly recommend people try running at least once in their life if you do enjoy the Pendrican system, because it's such a rush to see such a fleshed out series of stories meant across generations.
So yeah, so we have been playing the Great Pendragon campaign
Mm,
since October of 2017.
yes.
That's when we first rolled up our first set of young knights.
Mm-mm.
And depending on the player, we are at least in second or third generation characters
They
already.
were training under Sir Elan
And our
because
knight started in the time of Uther.
the annoying Sir Brastias was bullying you all to
Yes.
go to Ember and deal with the bear. That was the very first adventure.
In the beginning, all of our issues were more with the Saxons all
Mm.
over the place. But then later on it became more about helping, finding Arthur forming Camelot.
Whether or not to trust Merlin.
Uh, and then
Why does he keep obsessing over apples?
yeah, and we're at this point in time where we're now in the age of conquest. Right.
Yes.
So we're actually going to Rome.
Arthur has challenged the demands of the Emperor of Rome, and in his perspective, why can't we rule as well?
Mm.
Because as far as Arthur is concerned, he comes from the line of the old kings. Because this is Constantinople, right?
Charlemagne.
Charlemagne. This is that story, right?
But yeah, same. Charlemagne, because
So this is
Constantinople.
this is the pre-Pendragon book.
yeah, to be just showing off books. Okay.
Yeah. So if you like this system, but you want to play the myths and stories that lead to Arthur, you have this one. It's a
Paladin.
thicker book. It covers the same rule system. I think there are some adjustments because, of course, there are some differences between knights and paladins. This was by, I think it was Nocturnal. Yeah, it's by Nocturnal Media. But it's a system that works with it as well. So, Pendragon Campaign, um, it's a very ambitious book that tries to cover so much material. There are instances wherein the sidebars tell you the blank version of this tale introduces this player this character as this, but we are for the sake of combining them into this personality. The ganyan ganyan. In this point, the boy is actually Percival in ganyan ganyan story, but here he can just be ganyan boy, and we'll introduce Percival in a later page. So there are stuff like that that's present. There's even stuff that are marked on the sides. For example, the Grail quest, and your character's pagan, then he sees it as this instead, and blah 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 blah. So it's interesting how that book really tried to um, be the GM for you.
A lot of work. A lot of work
Yes.
went into it. So it's like even if you feel like you're not necessarily the biggest expert on Arthurian lore, and you're going to run the game, the books will try to support you as best they can.
Yes,
And prepare you for players who may know more of the myths than you.
like Adrian.
Yes. But it's been quite the adventure. So we've managed to keep up the games despite the pandemic. It is one of our regular online games. We play several times a month.
Yes.
Admittedly, which is a bit more than before, because in person we would play maybe once or twice a month. Now we get to play more.
A game session can represent moments in a year with multiple sessions covering that year. But then there might be occasions in the Great Pendragon campaign where a single game session can immediately cover the events of 2 or 3 years.
Or you get stuck in 1 year for months.
Mm.
It's like because there are certain years that are just more eventful.
Such
and
as
then,
the one we're in now.
Yeah, we're stuck.
The one we're in now, I think it's our fifth or sixth session
in the
this year.
same year,
And
and the
it's-
same. We're still not home,
And we're still in July
yeah, we're not even. We're not even
because we're fighting in the Alps with the Emperor now at sight.
Yeah, and there's been a giant again. Okay, so Dennis mentions he remember playing the first part of the Great Campaign. Oh, that's cool. So you at least did the Uther period maybe, and then some of early Arthur.
And mind you, there is a book where they tried to have the events prior to that, the
Mm.
build up to the Uther campaign.
So there's a lot going on, and it does require a lot of discipline. I mean, like, I'm sure I'm not the best note taker in terms of this game, um, and but even with notes, it literally has become this whole exercise of, oh, yes, I remember him. My father had an adventure of, when was that? They did something with the bear, or was it the apple? So all these things. Oh, and then Adrian through Jeanette mentions there was a time when it took us several months just to get through 4 days of battle. That is true.
Yes.
And just the, oh my god, the Battle of Baden Hill. That was a long one also. That was a
I
long
think
one.
that's one of the things that the Great Pendrican campaign did very well, which was to identify certain key battles
Mm.
and to really make sure that the GM knows to make these battles count. For example, if you've played the Great Pendulum campaign with anyone else and say St. Albans, they know what that's about.
Right.
And they're gonna curse, they're gonna spit at you for don't talk about St. Albans. But then if you talk about other battles, certain ones, like for example, oh, remember the Green Knight? Not the Green Knight from the movie that's now popular, but
But there is
the
a
first
there is
Green
a
Knight
Green
that
Knight,
appears.
yes.
Or remember those frogs?
And it really depends. And then plus there's a lot of supplementary material out there that
Mm.
which are the equivalent of side quests or
Yes.
optional one-offs, because there are a bunch of different myths and stories that aren't necessarily part of the mainline campaign, but you might
Whether
want to throw it in.
it's the Forest Sauvage or the Wasteland or deciding to be part of the battle at Hadrian's Wall. Yeah.
So there's a lot of love in this entire system in this game world, and then
Oh,
the
Dennis mentions Uther's final battle.
yeah, and then the Great Pendrican campaign really has become this truly epic gaming experience for us. It's 2022.
Hmm.
We're still playing through it. Arthur is at least a man now. It was difficult following Boy King Arthur
Yes.
into battle because his battle stat was crap.
And then you many of you still have, well, you definitely still have a senior character
Oh, my dad's still
who's
alive.
no longer a player
My
character,
dad's still alive.
but is no longer engaging as much in things, but lately has embraced this streak to be willing to die to achieve things.
Yeah, he's been trying to get himself killed in a glorious way, and I may have magically prevented this once or twice.
Because he's feeling his body failing, so he wants to like go out
Yeah, he wants to
before.
go in a glory. He's a glory. He's doing a Klingon thing right now. I worry for him, but
And he hates magic.
yeah, and then but I can only do so much because I am pushing 35. I'm like
Yes.
I'm over at 32, 33. So my character is gonna start aging out as well, and because of my unknightly path, I do not
Mm.
exactly have I don't have a strong succession plan in place. I've literally not had a squire
Hmm.
because I got because I'm this I'm long story short, but I'm a bit of a loner character because I was kidnapped as a kid and then replaced by a changeling,
Hmm.
and then eventually was rescued by Merlin,
Yes.
which explains my magical connection. So that's not been great for me in trusting people.
Mhm.
And then so yeah, so that's like my character's bent. But I know as a player, I'm like, crap, I need backup. I have kids though, but then I don't know if they're ready because they're barely at squiring
Yeah.
age. Barely at squiring
And
age.
then Urim's been playing as a monk character, which is the closest equivalent to
A Moor or something.
a more
Yeah.
character. But he's the one who's taken the Grail Knight path,
Yes,
is-
funnily.
which is forcing him to decide where his faith lies.
Yeah, with his old gods or the Christian one.
Because he still does venerate his old gods, and he sees the cup as a related artifact in that lore. But everyone who meets him sees him dressed as a Grail Knight,
Mm.
so they're thank the Lord and bring the blessings and this and that. So there's that part where he starts to feel that he's lying to those people, even if he's being honest to his own faith.
And he's had a diverse run because after his first character, then he played his uncle because he
Yeah.
didn't have an old enough kid yet, and then
And he
like
wanted to try playing evil.
he wanted to try being kind of more intriguing.
Yeah, and then he realized it wasn't as fun, or it wasn't a good fit for the game, so he shifted away immediately. But it kind of nicely tells you how the system really does favor a certain type of
Yeah,
character,
you can
which is what works for the system.
you can play against type and try, and the system will correct will self correct, I
Yeah.
guess, and you will feel the difficulty of what you're trying to do. So it really depends, it doesn't necessarily stop you, but obviously people who embrace the chivalric path and try to be better knights will progress faster than you because there are more bonuses, there's more protection, there's
And the
more whatever.
progression is to represent knightly progression.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Ultimately,
so
this is
like
a game
even you,
about being a
yeah.
knight.
So like even you felt the slowness of progression. It was moving faster in the magician side, but you were like, I'm not increasing my sword. I'm not increasing my sword because
Yeah.
you were increasing magical
Or
ability.
no, the other thing is that since glory is reputation, then we always have the fun thing about who's going to lead this group, and then I get to always say not me, because I never have the highest glory anymore, despite the fact that my father
Was so much more
is an
glorious.
earl
Hmm.
and so much more glorious, and
Hmm.
of our initial group of characters was the longest lived,
Yeah.
not counting the one who got lost in ferry, but
Mhm.
was the longest lived and had potentially the most glory to pass on. I only inherited a fraction of it because he was alive
Yeah.
at the time I created my character. So it was like I took a
Na
snapshot.
split pa yung glory nun.
Yeah, yeah. He still earned some more after
Mm.
because we were in big battles together. But it's all just a fun little aspect to the thing. So, okay, we talked about. I guess we should try to focus on, like, I don't know, key things we like, or things that particularly stand out. I
Mhm.
don't know. I think that's a good way to put it. I will go first and say that at first I was worried that the game would be very crunchy, and then, like, my God, traits. I mean,
Mm.
like, if I just want to tell a lie, I need to roll to see if I can tell a
Yeah.
lie.
It sounds clunky at first, but then when you have it in play, it so makes sense.
Yeah, because it really talks about sort of the struggle of living up to chivalric to living up to being a knight,
Mm.
and that defining your behavior. And then you know that you've really embraced it when you reach the point where you like mention my character is going to do this. Oh, but you know what? Can I roll honest? And like,
Mm.
can I check if I
Because
will do
because
this?
you internally want to see where the struggle leads you.
Yeah, and you want you there, and there's that separation between you and your character, and you kind of, as a player, are more invested in seeing what the character will have to do
Yes.
because of his traits and passions
Yes.
and whatnot. I mean, Adrian, and is a great example of when he first saw Guinevere and rolled his initial passion of love for Guinevere, because when you see particular characters, you can always choose to roll a passion for them. He rolled really high, higher than his main love interest, who became his wife.
Yeah, but his wife still had a higher stat later on.
No, but he had to work on it.
Yeah, he
He
had
had
to
to
build
work
it.
on it.
He had to build it, and that was literally it. We're in. Um, it was a I am making sure this relationship works. So he invested time to build that relationship and make it stronger. It it nicely had that realization of in some role playing games it might be just, oh, okay, I can make it that I'm in love now with your character and we'll do this, but here there was that I'm working on it, I'm building on it, so there's a mechanics behind the courtship, so to speak, that can be felt.
Yeah, so I like this is one of the games where I really really like sort of that interplay. So, like, how your stats, or at least particular stats, really do define sort of how your character is going to behave.
Mm.
And it's not arbitrary in the sense that my intelligence is high, so I'm going to be a know-it-all. I
Because
mean, like,
you'll
because those
still
are
choose.
those are
Yeah,
interpretations. But this one you have to roll it and, like, determine.
and here you still interpret how you'll do it.
And
So for
how the
example,
roll will resolve.
you have to lie to your lord, but your deceitful is too high, so your character's struggling to be honest about something, but then maybe you want to do it in character, so you'll switch it to you'll give a half truth or you'll exaggerate. So you're how do we put it? You're not. It's not like a magical imposition that you can't
Mm.
do it. You'll still have to just work with the fact that your character tends to do things a certain way. There, AD mentions, I used my wife to make sure I got home. I'm coming home, Elaine.
Yeah, but you were
Which was,
just as likely to roll
and
Guinevere.
that was always his passion role when he was doing it.
It's like you're always rolling Guinevere, and now you're a Queen's Knight.
Yeah, and for
So
those who
yeah.
are curious about that Guinevere Elaine thing, in the story, um, Adrian's character realized he was fated to create the Romantic Knights, the
Mm.
Order of the Romantic Knights. But that fate was shattered when he found Elaine because the love he had for Elaine was so great, he was no longer interested in any other woman. So, in order to make sure Arthur and his fate still continues with the Romantic Knights supporting him later on, he and Elaine discussed, and the two agreed that she will step out of fate and be forgotten for him to continue his legacy.
Which is a weird thing to agree to when you think about it. But
So it was very high drama,
mm.
very sacrifice for my king moment, which was amazing. He had to fail a role on Elaine in
Mm.
order to do it, and it was a I don't want to do this. You know, you have to for our king, and it works.
For
And
now,
and now, with Elaine not in the picture, his passions for Guinevere have risen to the fore. He has replaced the Lancelot story.
well, I will just say that my Merlin character is continually bothered by the shape of the spell that changed reality there, and I know he's not going to give up
Hmm.
unraveling it at some point.
But have you covered all your future steps? Because I know you
No.
fixed your garden path. I know you've already made sure that that will work out because you help yourself in the future, so you've now fixed it in the present to make
Yeah,
sure
so
the
like
past
the
will happen.
wastelands, I'm okay. I
Hmm.
think the garden thing, I'm okay.
The whetstone, you're okay.
Yeah, the whetstone, I'm okay. I'm still worried about the castle of glass at the end of
Hmm.
everything. That one we have not done prep for that.
Hmm.
Um, and I know I'm going to have to deal with Morgana.
Hmm.
So that's where I stand. Okay. But yeah, and what else? What else do you like about the game? At least for you running it.
So I'm also very happy that the game does tell you that in the end, it's still your Arthurian story.
Mm.
So, in as much as they go through the entire index of characters and personalities and this and that, nothing's really stopping you from taking a different direction on certain things, from adjusting certain things. Um, like, for example, when the mention of the different sons, as well as um, our favorite Pelennor, who
Oh,
who is also known to have so many sons. Um, the book offers the narrative of what happens to King Pelennor and the questing beast, but it still leaves a lot of things open for the GM to play with and take in a different direction.
we have had more than one battle with King Pelennor
Mm.
running in because he thinks he sees the questing beast.
Like another instance, which I've made a conscious choice, the book did offer a few other magical swords,
Yeah, that's
but
true. There are many swords.
I kind of like the idea that Excalibur was the only magical sword.
Yes.
So I've kind of kept that as the main focus. And then there are other items that have kicked in, but it's really still
Oh
Excalibur.
wow, flattery. Adrian says that my Merlin is from the Once and Future King by T.H. White. This not consciously, but I appreciate that. I do. Although, yeah, then I'll talk about Once and Future in a bit. Okay. What else? Yeah, and then just the for a game with a lot of combat, Pendragon makes combat terrifying, and I mean this in a good way.
Mm.
The sheer danger, the lethality of battle, is terrifying, and it all the more makes you admire what your characters do in the fact that they um, push forward despite everything else. Because you could die in round one
Mm.
of a big battle if things don't go your way, if the dice just go
Mm.
wrong. And then there are always terrifying things like um when Toby will like roll dexterity when wearing your full armor gives you a -10
Because
penalty
you're not,
against deck because you can't move fast.
you're not flexible, you're not well balanced in your armor.
So then it's oh no, and things like you charge. So you charge with your lance, but at an odd number, it's gonna break.
It shatters.
And then you don't have a lance anymore until like your squire comes running
Mm.
in, and then you could lose your squire because followers fade.
I
So
do
so many
I
things.
do love that you describe the engagement after you see the results of the roll.
Yes.
So, we're fighting, definitely I'll use sword, and then we roll, and then
And then
okay,
crap.
you failed, I succeeded. Okay, so I guess I'm swinging at you, I'm trying to strike at you, and then you might add, okay, I'll stab you at that moment, but then I swat it down and there's that opening, so I slash you across the face. And you build it based on the stats, because even if you both succeed, the higher roll still gets what they wanted. So that could range with I hit you, but you hit me and I hit you more, or you're forced to go total defense. So I'm not able to hit you effectively, and
But I lost my
your
action.
armor still protects me.
Or just how terrifying freaking axes are because they ignore shield. Like, what the hell is this weapon? And then you really hate Saxons after. So a lot of cool things. A lot of cool things. So I do appreciate that. And then just but yeah, it is the terror of combat, and that ebb and flow is a lot. In the beginning, it's gonna feel very crunchy. It'll take a while to get through your first battle. But then once you do, it makes so much sense.
And then it feels like you're in a battle, because
Yes.
in the next few scenes afterwards, you might be forced to stay in bed.
Yeah.
Moving can cause a major wound to happen, and this and that. There's no magical healing, so unless you like downtime forward a few weeks, your friends will have to visit you in your manor.
And the glory you get from all the kills and like enemy officers you captured doesn't really make you celebrate after because of the fact that even partial injuries are going to take forever to recover
Mm.
from, and you will not escape battle unscathed because even perfect defense will still mean you get 1 point of damage.
Yeah.
And when your average hit points are maybe 20 something points, every point is going to matter.
So every strike in that 5 rounds of combat still means out of your 20, you're
You're
most
gonna
likely
lose
5 points
5,
down.
and that's already scary.
Mm.
So I admire that aspect of the game.
We have another war. Who's still joining? And you're like, 12 hit points.
And then
Me.
commander will be like, we're going to stay for 5 rounds. 5 rounds. 5.
And keep in mind, you're still not locked in, because like during the battle, you could go, I'll retreat. You sure? I'm down to 3. Okay, fail valor. Like, no, wait. I'll passion my family so I can stuff like that. Adrian mentions combat has terrifying when he first played it, and it's still terrifying until now.
Yeah, I mean, like, no matter how good your character gets, it just takes one giant to kind of make you rethink your life choices.
Yeah. What find more terrifying is when you declare how many rounds you'll decide.
Right? It's that initial bet. It's a bet of like how long you're gonna survive.
So yeah, so we have Pendragon and we have Paladin, 2 games which are pretty awesome. Pendragon being the focus of the episode, Paladin being if you want a different flavor, it also exists.
But then specifically celebrating the Great Pendrican campaign
Yes.
for King Arthur Pendragon. So that one, like, if you're gonna play Pendragon only once in your life, you might as well play the Great Campaign.
Yeah,
And
if you don't finish it, that's fine. But just to experience going through that type of a saga, just reach St. Albans and you're good.
I don't know if good is the term, but okay. And admittedly, this has inspired me to like. I want to. Part of me still wants to, but is not prepared to run a similar sort of long term battle tech narrative game because the history of the Inner Sphere is actually very very rich and
Yes.
obviously follows a medieval style feudal hierarchy.
Mhm.
So it kind of plays out in the same way where you have fathers and sons and their sons fighting the same wars against the same families, and yeah, that there's that I want to do.
I think a large part of why we fell in love with the Pendragon campaign, well, the Pendragon system, was we had a preview of the similar roots in Blood and Honor.
Mm, mm.
John Wick has always been a big fan of Pendragon, so when he wrote Blood and Honor, he tried to introduce many elements which we can see are echoes of the Pendragon system. There's the building of your
History. Mm.
holdings. There's the aging per winter phase. There's that approach to how injuries might not necessarily be easy to deal with and the like. So, with all that being stuff we fell in love with when we played Blood and Honor, Houses of Blood Dead, and even later on Cold Shadows, um, to get Pendragon in our hands was to see the roots that inspired those systems. And we just really loved it.
So yeah, so I would definitely like recommend it. I will admit it's not the easiest game system to get
Mm.
into, and then it require a certain amount of passion to push through with it. But then even if you're only like a casual, like you only have casual knowledge of King Arthur and his knights,
Mm.
I feel like then all the more it will make the game exciting for you because then you get to experience the stories in their own way. And even if you're an expert, then you will still
Find
I'm
yourself surprised.
still surprised because again, it is still particular interpretations, and the
Yeah.
people who wrote the book made deliberate changes, just to set it has in itself a cohesive narrative
Yes.
and history to play through.
I will add that the game, however, will not work if you do not play knights.
Yes,
So if you just want to use the game system to play a standard fantasy setting, then you'll find the passions and the trait system clunky. But then if you throw those out, I don't see the game being as rich as it could be.
the traits are
Um,
totally essential.
Despite it being a system that's very close to um, Call of Cthulhu because it's basic role playing system, a variant of it.
Mm.
We're in. If basic role playing, it's rolling percentile, but it's still at the same time rolling below your stat. Rolling equal is critical. So this is a version of that we're in the D20. The interweaving mechanics of passion and trait, and then those two to the few attributes you have, is very vital. Add to that glory. The concept of glory in this game really enriches the personalities of the characters of the game. If you were to play it as non-knights, then glory doesn't matter. Suddenly, there's a lot of little systems that don't seem to make sense anymore.
Yeah, this is not a game for murder hobos, so to speak.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Jeanette, Adrian say Pendragon is essentially a character study for the player characters. That's true. That's true.
Mm-mm.
And all the more for it. So I don't know how far we're gonna go. We're gonna see it through. I think I have one more generation in me at least.
Mm-mm.
Um, I think, although other players will need to maybe invest more, but
Yeah,
we're
because
gonna
if you
see
think about it in
get
the
as far.
story,
Yeah.
the key the round table knights are literally just joining.
Mhm.
Right, Lancelot, Percival, they're
We're not at the grill yet.
they're just starting to enter the
The
story.
siege perilous remains empty.
So it really does tell you that the knights you're using now will have to be retired, and a new generation will be the ones with those knights later on.
Doesn't help that I'm barely a knight. All right,
Mm-mm.
but okay, okay, okay. That's
But then
my
again,
character slot in
the
life.
Merlin is living backwards. So
I'm not the Merlin.
yeah, you're the warlock.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's about it. Ooh, it's we're about the length of a Korean drama. Okay,
So we're definitely
episode.
we're definitely aiming to finish the entire Great Pendragon campaign.
One day,
Um,
I would like to finish in person.
um,
I as much as it's convenient to play online, I do
yeah,
want to finish this campaign in person.
yeah, and there are challenges to that. Other than the pandemic, there's the real world challenges of long term plans and this and that. But it
Traffic.
would be nice to actually reach its end in person. And who knows, maybe when we reach the twilight years of the Great Pendragon campaign, maybe we'll make sure that the last few sessions we meet up face to face. Maybe we'll be able to, in that point in time, let's all be on leave from our work for 1 week, and then we spend that whole week playing the last few sessions to
Wow,
end it.
luxury. What a luxury. Okay, but we shall see. It never hurts to dream. Yeah, so that is King Arthur Pendragon, the RPG.
Highly recommended. if there's only one other game you'll ever play and it's not going to be Dungeons and Dragons, other than Dungeons and Dragons, this is a strong contender. Not necessarily the first for me,
Not the easiest.
but definitely um, lower barrier of difficulty to consider trying compared to something as weird as Houses of the Blood.
That is true. That is true. All right. Okay, so for questions or suggestions for future episodes, feel free to fill up the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. You can follow us on Twitter, Altobino Shade, RG Sunico.
You could also check out our blog, baduypride.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about us.
And feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below. How far did you get in the Great Pendrican campaign, or do you just want to try it? We would love to hear from you. And be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is
Baduy
Baduy
Pride.
You want to thumbnail your books?
Yeah. Oh, Mikey is asking.
I saw.
We should talk about Dracula Dossier next.
But we're so not. We're far enough. I don't know. Okay.
Thanks for